Welcome to The Pulse, uplifting content brought to you from healthcare experts at Rocky Mountain University of Health Professions. My name is Jody Genesee from RMU. In this podcast, we are joined by Dr. Crystal Miskin, an assistant professor and graduate of RMU's Doctor of Physical Therapy program, who is conducting doctoral research on running injuries. With RMU being a sponsor of the 2025 Utah Valley Marathon, the topic of this special episode will be post-marathon recovery. Hope you enjoy. All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's do this.
Okay.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Dr. Miskin.
Yeah, you can call me Crystal, of
All right,
course.
Crystal, Dr. Crystal.
Or just Crystal. That's what my patients call me.
Okay.
It's what my 3-year-old now calls me. She's in that phase of, calling me by my first name and my husband by his first name rather than mom and dad. So,
Well, hopefully
Crystal's
she
just
doesn't
great.
use your middle name as well. Then you'll know you're in trouble.
Thankfully,
Well, before we delve into the topic of today's podcast, running injuries and post-marathon recovery, can you just briefly give us an intro about yourself and describe what you do at RMU?
Absolutely. So I am an assistant professor here at RMU. I absolutely love it. I've told my husband that I have my dream job and we can never move away. So thankfully this is now on a recorded record, right?
Yes, you cannot move away, husband.
That's right. I teach the physical agents course here on campus within our Doctor of Physical Therapy program. I also teach imaging, so how to use imaging in your clinical practice and have that inform your diagnosis, plan of care, prognosis. And then I also teach within the kinesiology and musculoskeletal courses.
How long have you been at RMU?
5 years, most recently. So I was actually a physical therapy student here about 10 years ago when I started. And when I graduated, I told the faculty, I'll be back. Now, I'm back a lot sooner than I anticipated, but I'm happy to be back. And like I said, it's my dream job, and I love it. Love working with students, love working with patients, and so it's just the best of both worlds.
Oh, that's great. Well, we hope you're an RMU lifer. So,
Me too.
so what is your running background?
So that's a really good question. I was actually never really a track athlete or a cross-country athlete. I started my introduction more on our family farm. And farm may be a little too large of a scale to put it, but it was just like a 1 acre in a rural area of Southern California. And we had hills behind us. I used to do rodeo. And I did it semi-professionally for a long time before college. And so I really started getting into nutrition and sports performance, but through an equine background. And it wasn't until physical therapy school. Now, I should back up. My brothers were all track athletes and cross-country athletes. I was the horse girl. And so that was my introduction to endurance, but also speed and power, since I was in the barrel racing and speed jumping events with my horse. So when I came to RMU, I was kind of introduced to this whole other world of behind the scenes of athletes. I had had my own injuries before. I had torn my ACL in college playing rugby. And so went into PT school with kind of this same probably expectation that a lot of our students do of, I'm going to work with athletes. But, I kind of took a way around. I went through several experiences with the military for about 8 months as a contractor doing one of my clinical rotations. And that's where I was also introduced into more of that athletic performance, but more from a patriotism side that really resonated with me, and I loved it. And that's kind of where I fell into it. So before graduation, I decided I'm going to do a residency. I need to further my knowledge. I need to learn more. And the more I learn, the less I know. After residency, I found again that passion of learning, and I jumped into a sports and manual therapy fellowship in Southern California. And from there is where I was really introduced into running, performance, and that kind of segued into injuries, and that was injury recovery, and that snowballed into like injury prediction. Can I now see how somebody runs, and can that predict injury? Because runners suffer from a extremely high injury rate. About 80% of runners will be injured during the 1 year, and at any given moment, 20% of runners are injured. And I just thought, wow, that is crazy. We don't even have a prediction tool. There's no prediction model. These things are multifactorial. And so in some ways, I feel like I'm chasing I don't know, a cat or something, and it's just running away from me as I try to learn more and really progress in my educational and professional journey.
So yeah, let's talk about the running and post marathon recovery. And one of the things that's interesting that comes up a lot is the subject of hydration and refueling. So after finishing a marathon, what should runners prioritize first, hydration or food, or maybe it might be the porta potty, but
Well, it may not be the porta potty, but it could be. That's a very good question. Can I say both?
sure.
Yeah, that's hard to pinpoint one. Now, with food and hydration, both of them are just so important. And hopefully, during the marathon, our runners are eating and they are drinking during that entire, athletic feat. 0.05% of individuals actually complete a marathon. So, all of these individuals are really impressive people. But when it comes down to post marathon, within 30 minutes, runners need to be eating and they need to be drinking. It's pretty crazy when you talk about how much sweat these individuals will lose during their marathon. And we're talking about, several liters of sweat during a marathon. And so coming off of the marathon, hopefully they've been hydrating, but you really need to be taking in 1 liter of water per kilogram of body weight loss during your athletic event. Now that can be replaced over several hours, but immediately after the marathon, they really need to start drinking. Now, food is another side of this coin where I talked about that 30-minute window. Because the body has gone through and burned basically all of its glycogen storages in order to complete the marathon, you have to refuel as quickly as possible in order to avoid prolonging your recovery. So immediately after, runners need to be thinking about taking in various carbohydrate sources, including fructose and glucose, so multiple sources. And we're talking about 1 to 1.2 grams per kilogram of your body weight immediately after the marathon. And then over several hours, you have about another 4-hour window where you need to be fueling and refueling during that time frame. And then after about that point, you can go back to normal of what your normal caloric intake is.
What kind of nutrients are, when you sweat, you're obviously losing water, but there's salt and what else are you losing, and what do you need to replenish and why?
That's a good question. So there's lots of things. So fat, your body's going to be going through its fat stores. So even after that marathon, you need to be eating something with fat. When you talk about glycogen, that's just the way that the body stores its glucose, which is from your food that it gets broken down into. So you're burning through that glycogen. And then you're also going through protein. So if you're not consuming protein either before your marathon, maybe small bits during, and then obviously after, your body's going to metabolize its own muscles in order to rebuild itself and get those building blocks and construction materials, so to say, to recover. So fat, carbohydrates, you've got your protein, and then we talked about electrolytes, another big component. Our electrolytes help our nervous system. It helps our brain function, helps our muscles function. Basically, every cell needs it. So if you're losing all of those salts and you're losing that sodium, then you really do have to replenish that as well as quickly as possible after the marathon and ideally during.
I guess they'll probably want to take into account the humidity and the temperature and altitude, things like that, probably factor in as well.
Yes, and that talks, no pun intended, but volumes, right, towards your sweat and what you're losing. And so hydration is key during the marathon, even before and after. Typically, athletes will have their athletic performance reduced if they're dehydrated. And I'm talking about percentages of body weight. So by 2% of losing your body weight, that's when you start to feel thirsty. But at that point, you've already lost about 10% of your exercise capacity. Now, if you continue to wait and say, well, I'll just wait till the next station to drink, or the next, if there's a family member who's going to hand you something out at some point in the race, if you're just going to wait, you may be losing 5 to 7% of your body weight. And that's a lot. And at that point is usually when people will stop running or stop their exercise completely. So most often we see people stop exercising or stop races because of the lack of hydration rather than fuel.
Interesting. So sleep and rest sound awfully good after a run or before or during a run. Some of us sleep while other people are running. But how important is sleep in recovery, and how many rest days do you typically recommend for somebody after doing something as significant as a marathon or even for a half marathon for those longer races?
Yeah, sleep is paramount. I tell patients all the time, if you're not sleeping, you're not healing. And it kind of goes hand in hand with a marathon. Typically, we think of adults needing about 7 to 9 hours of rest. Post-marathon, we're looking at 8 to 10, and hopefully more towards that 10-hour time point. Sleep is when our body recovers. It's when it regenerates. It's when it's able to go through and repair itself. So you really got to rest. Now that takes us to the rest component of your question is how long do I just jump back into running the next day? The answer is no. You really do need to take at least 3 days of just stop doing physical activity, allow your body to rest, regenerate, repair itself, and then maybe start thinking about doing like a walk jog or a really light, easy, short jog towards that 1 week mark. A good way to know if you're ready to start running again is, can you walk down the stairs without having to hold on with 2 hands or limp down them or take them one at a time? So some coaches say once you can go down the stairs normally, that's when you're ready to start running.
When I did my Ironman triathlon, it took me about a week to be able to get up and down stairs. Those are brutal after those long distance races. How about recovery tools? Are there tools or techniques that you think provide the biggest bang for your buck?
There are several tools out there, and ultimately I would say do what makes you feel best or makes you feel good, and especially the ones that you use during your training because your body has already been trained to respond in a certain way. Now, when we look at what the research says, sometimes that's not always exactly what people do, and they do what makes them feel good, and I'd say that's part of evidence-based practice, the 3 pillars of expert opinion or what the research says, and then what does the runner feel is best. However, if I had to go on like the research side of things, cold water immersion seems to be one of those better techniques. And I'm not talking about polar plunges. I'm talking about just cold water. So about 51 to 59 degrees for about 10 minutes. You don't have to do much more than that. And the reason being is because after the marathon, your muscles have blood vessels in them and they're completely vasodilated, meaning they went from like a spaghetti noodle to a garden hose. And so because those muscles needed so much blood, a lot of individuals will feel lightheaded after the marathon or a lot of gastric distress. So it's important to start slowing the blood vessels down and get blood flow back to kind of that normal, what we call homeostasis, or like back to what's like normal or imbalance within the body. Cold water immersion helps with that. It makes those blood vessels vasoconstrict, meaning go from that garden hose back to the spaghetti noodle. And so there's a lot less swelling that occurs. What we call DOMS, or delayed onset of muscle soreness, also can come down. So that soreness that you felt going up and down your stairs, that can also come down, maybe not be as high or as intense in somebody who may have not done that.
Foam rollers I know are popular, and a lot of people quickly do stretching as well. How do those factor in?
Yeah, stretching is great. Foam rollers are great. Just be cautious on how much you're compressing those muscles after your marathon. They've already been compromised. There's been some micro tears in them. If you're going to do stretching, make it a little bit more dynamic, not too aggressive, just to keep things moving so you don't stiffen up. Same thing with that foam roller. Love it or hate it, and you'll find a lot of opinions on both sides of that aisle of whether it's, the greatest gimmick or it's actually something that really works. Whatever side of the aisle you're on, do it. Whatever makes you feel better. Just be careful you're not foam rolling too hard or compressing too much.
Let's get into some mistakes. What are a few common recovery mistakes that people make after the races that might slow down their post-marathon recovery?
So mistakes. Don't stop after the marathon. Fall on your knees and give thanks to the heavens that you survived.
That is a long ways to run, 26.2 miles.
It absolutely is. And if you think about the history of the marathon, the first marathon runner was in Athens, so like in Greece. And after the war, I want to say it was against, I don't remember the exact thing, so hopefully nobody quotes me on this. But after the war, the runner, which I think was Philippides or something like that. He ran from Marathon in Greece all the way to Athens and then died after he told everybody that they had won the war. So don't stop at the end of the race. Not that you will die. Hopefully you don't. But you really do need to keep walking. Allow your blood pressure, allow your heart rate, all that. We talked about vasodilation. Allow that all to kind of simmer down slowly. And that might take 10 to 30 minutes of just cool down. Let your body come back down to what was normal before. That will help with avoiding a lot of nausea, avoiding feeling like you're going to faint, some of that dizziness you might feel because the blood's been shifted to your muscles rather than the rest of your body, like, brain or your intestines. So let your body begin to recover and cool down before you decide to rest and sleep and just hibernate essentially until you're recovered.
Another question is, what can runners do before and during the race to promote post-race recovery?
I always say what you do before the race, during the race, will often dictate what happens after the race. So all of your training is also going to set you up for that success afterward or even during the race. So you're not just training your muscles and your ability to run, but you also have to be training your metabolism, your metabolic systems. So every day you're training needs to be a day where you're practicing your fueling and you're practicing your hydration and then those recovery techniques that we briefly discussed. After that, during your race, you really need to be hydrating. Push the water. Even if you're not thirsty, that's going to dictate your exercise capacity during the race. Push the water. Also the electrolytes and everything else, that goes into a race. But in terms of, what can you do to make recovery the easiest before the race? Fueling, make sure you're practicing your fueling, and then make sure that you're fueling during and hydrating during your race.
Now, on a personal note, you're pretty amazing.
Oh, well, thank you.
You have a newborn baby. How many children do you have?
I've got three. A
3-year-old,
2-year-old, and a 6-month-old.
Wow. And you're a professor, and you also are working on a PhD. Like, do you have 48 hours in every day? How do you make that work?
It takes a team. So thank you. You can see what happens on the outside, but I need somebody to help watch my kids during the day because I can't do everything. Obviously, I wish I could. I really wish I could be 100% in all of the areas, but it's always a give and take and a shifting and balancing. There's no such thing as balance. It's always like where's the need the most, and you just kind of do that balancing act and stay afloat somehow. I have a very supportive husband, supportive family. When I'm home, I'm 100% home. Before bedtime, and then after bedtime, I'm back on the computer working on my PhD. But when I'm home, I'm definitely present with my kids, and I sure have a lot of fun with them.
Oh, that's fantastic. And you have a doctor of physical therapy, and now you're pursuing a PhD in health sciences. What was the impetus to getting a second doctorate degree?
Oh, I think I'm psycho. It sounded
I'm glad you said it.
I know. It's like I sounded good 5 years ago when I started this journey. That was before kids, actually. So now that I'm obviously a mom, it's still a good idea to do a PhD right now. I need to finish it, though. But what was the impetus? That's a good question. I think I just really enjoy learning. The more I learn, the less I know. And I still don't know everything. I think RMU did a really good job about teaching me how to think, even in my PT degree, how to think, how to question things, and then how to search out the literature, search for the answer. Now, not all of the answers are there, and even the things that we've discussed today, these are very broad and general recommendations from what I've learned in the research, what I've learned from others, what I've experienced. But obviously, from an individualistic standpoint, you have to find out what works for you.
Right. And so you mentioned working on your doctoral dissertation. And so could you tell us about your research that you're doing? I believe it's on running gaits and injury.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to. It's my favorite topic these days. So coming from my PT standpoint, we briefly mentioned this in the beginning about how somebody runs and can that potentially increase their risk of injury? The answer is maybe. And from a from a clinician standpoint, like I said, I would watch people run on the treadmill. I pick out what seems to be a deviation or what's not, quote, normal. But the more I learn, it's more of like there's a range of normal. And even some of the greatest runners in the world have pretty wonky runs, and they don't seem to be getting injured to the point of like career ending. Obviously, we're always in the cycle of probably little hiccups and bumps. But in terms of my research, I'm trying to validate a tool to help predict the risk of somebody's injury. So can I watch somebody run on a treadmill and say, based off of this form, you're at a low, moderate, or high risk of injury? And maybe I'll be able to pull in timelines of within the next 3 months, within the next 6 months. That's my first question I'm trying to answer. The second question is, from all these other variables that I'm gathering, can I create a model and maybe eventually use machine learning and artificial intelligence to create a prediction model for people where we can plug in, different variables and say, okay, based on you're at a low, moderate, or high risk of injury. And that could be, life-changing or even performance-changing for someone to say, okay, I need to work on X, Y, and Z in order to drop my risk. No one will probably ever be at zero risk. There's always risk because you're active and you're running and putting stress on tissues. But that's what I'm working on in a nutshell.
Well, that's really interesting. It makes me wonder what the biggest cause for injuries would be. I would assume that it'd be pushing yourself past your limit, or trying to run too fast or too long, or maybe ignoring those little telltale signs of something's feeling a little tweaked and I can rub it a little bit and just keep going. Have you found anything like that in your research?
I think then, and by far, like I said, multifactorial, but maybe potentially the number one thing is training errors. Like you said, you're pushing yourself too fast, too soon, too long, maybe not putting enough recovery in. Looking at the other stressors of life, we talk about like external and internal loads of an individual. Like stress is internal and external is the demands you're putting on your body. Sometimes there's a balance that has to be kept in order to avoid becoming injured.
So you need test subjects for your research, right?
Yes, I do.
All right. So how can somebody volunteer to participate?
The best way to do it right now is probably just to email me that you're interested. And that's just my first dot last name, so crystal.miskin@rm.edu. And I'm probably going to be looking for subjects over the next year, honestly. So I've got about 30 or so subjects right now. I need 200. So I'm at races every weekend. So some of our listeners may have seen me, may have talked to me at some point, and I'm talking to as many people as possible. So upwards of 1,000 right now. It's just a matter of getting them to come in and commit.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. How long do you anticipate this research process will take?
I hope to graduate in 2 years because I'm looking at runners and then following them for about 6 months, every 2 weeks, giving them a survey about whether they've been injured or not, or what types of physical activity they've been involved in, including their running history. And that's over 6 months. So that's why I say about 2 years. So I'm hoping to be done with data collection around hopefully November, December, and then again 6 more months of the surveys, and then really dialing in and analyzing the data that I've received.
Well, let's talk about the Doctor of Physical Therapy program at RMU. For someone thinking about becoming a physical therapist, what makes RMU a strong choice for their education?
Well, I'm very biased. Obviously, I came here with my own education initially, but I loved it. I thought the program was good then, and I honestly can say that the program's even better now. We really prepare our students to enter the clinical world. They're armed with evidence-based practice. They've got a lot of tools in the toolbox. And as I do a lot of clinical site visits with our clinical instructors across the United States, they all emphatically report that RMU students are the best prepared. And recently in Utah, they passed that PTs are now primary care providers. And we've already been training our students to fulfill that role because many go into the military model where the PT practice is just so broad. They have to already be prepared to differentially diagnose, meaning be able to pick apart, something, PT related, or could it be another type of condition that I have to refer out to? Our students are just so prepared, and I stand behind them. I love our students.
All right, now the fun part, the RMU rapid fire round.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so we're going to give you some quick questions, and you're going to respond with some quick answers. No overthinking. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Right, let's go. All right. Ice bath, yay or nay?
Yay.
Great. Compression socks, fashion or function?
Function.
Coffee post-race, helpful or harmful?
Helpful.
Foam rolling, before bed or after a run?
After a run.
Your go-to recovery meal?
Chocolate milk and a peanut butter banana.
Best post-race stretch?
Ooh. Walking. Like, just move it.
How many hours of sleep do you aim for after a race?
10. Aim. Keyword.
One word to describe the perfect recovery day.
Eat, drink, rest, repeat. I don't know. Walk. It's like...
That was a lot of one words.
Should I put it like supercalifragilistic? Eat, drink, rest, repeat.
That sounds good. All right. How many miles a day do you run after your kids?
After my kids? Gosh, she's fast. Like to the corner and back. After my kids, I feel like I'm running all day. I know that was a quick rapid fire, but if I'm just making sure they're not choking or dying, right? I've tried to start jogging with my kids. It's kind of hard to push that stroller when there's 3 of them now in it. But I'm postpartum. I haven't actually started running yet. We usually give, and this is again, my clinical brain, 6 months is the general recommendation. I'm just hitting that. So trying to get everything back online, getting strong again, and then it's time to start running.
Where's your favorite place to jog?
Oh, the Provo River Trail.
And last but not least, your favorite race?
Probably the Utah Valley one. Obviously, it's coming up. It's like, not to be too biased, but that's a fun one. Yeah, Utah Valley.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Crystal, for joining us today, and it's been a delightful conversation.
Thank you. Likewise, I appreciate it.